G'day and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico, and we're going to be talking about that game coming up on Saturday between Scotland and France to be played at Murrayfield, and what an opportunity it is for both of these teams. France, after that very unimpressive display against Ireland last week, will be wanting to bounce back, and Fabian Galthie and his crew will be looking for a much improved performance from this French team. On the other hand, Scotland were just able to hang on against Wales in that absolute cliffhanger at Cardiff in the weekend, and they'll be wanting to display more of what they produced in the first 40 minutes of that game against Wales last weekend. But in front of their home crowd, the Scottish fans are going to be there to cheer on their team. Let's have a look at both of these teams' lineouts as they're going to run out onto the field on Saturday, and I'll give you my views and thoughts after that on the prediction for this particular game. Now, looking at the French backline, it looks like Fabian Galthie has been listening to me and he's decided to make that change that I was talking about last weekend. But let's start off at fullback first of all, and Thomas Ramos gets the nod again at fullback. Mr. Consistency with the boot will be wanting to make sure he gets plenty of penalties and maybe even a conversion and drop goal or two over as well this weekend. On the wings for France, we have Damien Penaud, and on the other wing we have Biel Biarri, and I was talking about him being the starter that France really needed in this game. I really like this game. I think this guy, I thought he had a wonderful World Cup last year, and he's one of those guys that can get the ball and excite the crowd and change the course of a game. So it's great to see him starting for France this weekend. Then we move into the centres, and we've got Ficou and we've got Dante coming back in again. Both of these guys, I think, underplayed their games against Ireland, and they'll be wanting to see a much improved performance from both of them. Dante is another who has the ability to break through a line. He's kind of like a Bundy Archie kind of guy as far as I'm concerned, and he can smash through any defence in the world if he's having a good game and he gets some clean ball. Talking about clean ball, inside those two we've got Zealander and we've got Luku back in this weekend. There was a lot of talk whether or not Luku would get in the team to play against Scotland this weekend, but it looks like Fabian Galthie has got the belief in Luku to carry on the job. And a lot of people have been talking about, of course, Antoine Dupont missing from this team is having a real big impact on this French team, and they'll be coming out with a point to prove, I think, this weekend against Scotland. So expect Jalabert to be able to try and control the game from number 10. It's all going to depend on how those forwards go up against a good Scottish pack this weekend to see whether France can get those backs away and ignite. So the back substitutes for France in this game are going to be Lagric and Mofana. Mofana, of course, starting last week against Ireland in the game that they lost down there in Marseille. So only two on the bench for the backs, and again Fabian Galthie goes with a 6-2 split. Going to be interesting to see how that works out. He's wanting those forwards to get some domination over the Scots this weekend. It did not work against Ireland. Will it work against Scotland? Well, we'll have to wait and see for the weekend. So that's the French backs they're going to be taking to the field this weekend. Let's have a look at the forwards now. Now, looking at the back three for France in the forwards, we've got Olivon, we've got Aldred at number 8, and we've got Crew, the other flanker, as well. These guys didn't live up to expectation against Ireland. They were well beaten by Van der Fleer, Doris and Omani, and they'll be wanting to come out against Scotland and really make their presence felt. And I think Gregory Aldred really needs to step up a little bit. We know he's a good player. In fact, he's a brilliant player. He just didn't have the chance to show that against a dominant Ireland team last weekend. So a good back row for France. Let's see how good they can be. Then moving on to the locks for this game for France, we've got Gabriel Ligas and we've got Woki, and it's good to see Cameron Woki back in the starting lineup for France. I really rate this guy. I think he had a wonderful World Cup for France, and I think he's going to be a big injection for this French pack on Saturday against Scotland. So look out for Woki to be doing a lot of work, particularly in the breakdown as well. He's good when he gets the ball in hand. He can make a break up the field, but he's also good at set pieces. So I think he's going to add some real value to this French pack. And then we go into the front row for France, and it's the same as last week. We've got Antonio, Malvaca and Bai. And Malvaca, I think, is one of the best hookers going around in World Rugby today. He's got that kind of real brilliance when it comes to being able to run. He's also extremely good in defence, and sometimes he just doesn't show in the games because of the way the rest of the French pack's going. But if you watch him as an individual, he's very, very dynamic in that hooker position. So a very good front row. I was impressed with Antonio last week, even though he was on a losing team. He had the stamina to go a long way into that game for France, and I think that was a good thing for France. So I expect another big performance from him this weekend. France are going to have to really turn up in the forwards if they're going to have any chance in this game against Scotland. Now, to say France have got some big boys on the bench in the forwards is an understatement in this game. Having a look at them, they've got Marchand, Toya Whenua, El Degree, then Peloso Tuolagi. Well, we saw him last week. What a giant of a guy, and what an impression he made when he came on the field as well. And then they've got Rumat and Bourrant. So a very, very good substitution bench for France. Again, Fabian Galthie going with the 6-2 split, and expect that to have a big impact in this game. I think the fact that he's got these huge forwards on the bench is going to make a difference later on in this game. Whether or not France are chasing the game by then, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, let's flip over to the Scottish team, and the home team this weekend will be running out to their hordes of fans in Murrayfield, which is a fantastic venue to watch rugby. It's one of those bucket list items if you're a rugby fan, to go and watch a beautiful game of rugby at Murrayfield and listen to the Flower of Scotland being sung. It's something very, very emotional indeed. Now, the back three in the backs for Scotland this week are going to be the same as last weekend. So we've got Rowe at fullback, we've got Steyn, and we've got Van der Verve on the wings. And of course, Duhan Van der Verve scored those 2 great tries last weekend against Wales, both set up by Finn Russell, and he's back to playing his best rugby, which is good for everybody who's a rugby fan around the world. I thought Steyn had a pretty good game for Scotland, particularly in the first half. He was doing a lot of good things, but like many of the Scottish players, he went missing for a large part of that second half. But he did do some good breaks, and he probably deserves his place back in this team without Darcy Graham being available at this stage. Rowe, I thought, was good at fullback, and he'll be looking for another solid game as Blair Kinghorn sits on the sideline still watching this game for Scotland. When we come into the centres for Scotland, I both think that Tuipulotu and Jones both had something to prove in this match. Tuipulotu got sent off with a yellow card last week, and it was at a very pivotal moment of the game. So I think he'll be back with a point to prove. And I think Hugh Jones needs to have a big game as well. He was missing in action a little bit in the second half last weekend for Scotland, as were most of the Scottish players. So I really like this combination. They did very, very well at the Rugby World Cup without being superstars to get Scotland across the line into the knockout stages. But they did play well, and I expect them to have a big game against France in the weekend. Then moving on inside, we have Finn Russell, of course, the master magician of the Scottish team. We saw his brilliance in the first half last weekend, and we also saw his brilliance at the end of the game. I thought he controlled that last 5 minutes for Scotland and got them going on the front foot, got their defence reorganised, and they were able to hold on to that game against Wales. So Finn Russell showed his class, I think, last weekend right across the pitch. Got Finn Russell, of course, paired up with Ben White at halfback in this game. And I expect these two guys to have a very big influence on this game. White with his box kicking, and Finn Russell doing everything that he orchestrates from number 10. So I expect these two guys to be very, very influential in this game for Scotland. And then on the reserves, we've got Horn, Healy and Redpath for Scotland. Redpath's a young player that impresses me. If he comes on, he's going to have another opportunity to show what he's got, but he's a very elusive runner, and he can break open any defence. So if Scotland are chasing the game, he's a good one to have come on. So a good back line for Scotland, and if they play like they did in the first half of last weekend's game, then they're obviously going to have the ability to take it right up to this French team. Okay, moving on to the Scottish forwards now. We've got some changes here which are quite interesting as far as I'm concerned. So the back three, we see Dempsey, Darge and Matt Ferguson coming in. So Dempsey coming in at number 8, and then Rory Darge is back on the flank along with Matt Ferguson. And this is a great trio for Scotland, and I think this is going to go a long way to helping them be very, very competitive in this game. These three are going to have to get in there and get that early ball from the breakdown turnover situation. They're also going to be pivotal, I think, in terms of getting ball off the back of the French line-out if France decides to go long in the line-out opportunity. So watch out for that in this game to see whether or not these three can steal some ball from that French line-out. Very, very good back three for Scotland in this game. Moving into the locks for Scotland, and we see Cummings and Gilchrist. These guys are going to have a big game. They're up against Woki and Gabrielakis, and there's some big boys in this French team that these guys are going to have to try and control the set piece from. Set piece is going to be very, very important in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of structure to the game in the first 10 minutes or so, but then I think the game's going to open up and France are going to throw everything they can at trying to run the ball at Scotland this weekend. So expect that set piece play in the first 10 minutes to be critical, and these locks of Cummings and Gilchrist are going to have to work hard. And having a look at the front three, the tight three for Scotland, and we have Zander Fagerson, Turner and Schumann, and a good front three. Again, they're going to have to be pivotal when it comes to winning ball for Scotland in this game against France. And look for these guys in the tight to have a technical superiority, I think, over the French front row. But it's going to be the size of this French pack that I think gives Scotland a bit of a hard time. So I think Scotland's going to have to rely on winning a lot of breakdown ball in this game to be really, really effective, because with the reserves that France have in the forwards, they're going to be pretty big and pretty strong throughout this entire game. Okay, looking at the reserve forwards for Scotland coming into this game, and they include Ashman, Hepburn, Miller-Mills, Skinner and Christie. So a good bench there. I don't think it lives up to what France are going to throw onto this game in the second half, and this is where I think France might have a little bit of advantage in this game this weekend. Anyway, let's get on and have a look at my prediction for this game. Okay, so my prediction for this game, I think it's going to be a close one, but I think it also could be a high scoring game. And it's all going to depend on whether or not France can get enough quality ball to get these French backs away, and whether these French backs actually have a plan. What I saw against Ireland was two things. I saw a great Irish defence that put a lot of pressure on these French backs, and I saw a clueless French backline that didn't know how to break through that Irish defence. I don't think the Scottish defence is as good as what Ireland's was. Therefore, I think France are going to have more opportunities to be able to use their backs in a more decisive way. I think having Bielri there is going to be a game changer for France in this game. Expect him to score at least one try. And Damien Penaud on the other wing is also very, very dangerous. He always knows where the try line is. And Thomas Ramos can keep the scoreboard ticking over with points either from penalties or conversions. So I think if France are able to get on top in the forwards and get enough good quality ball, the French backs are going to have something a little bit too much for the Scottish counterpart. And I think because the Scottish defence is not as good as what we saw from Ireland, that's where France are going to win this game. But it's going to be very, very close, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's only 1 or 2 points in it at the end of the match. Now, a lot of people are saying that France were extremely disappointing last week, and they were, but Ireland were very, very good, so let's not discount that. And we saw how Scotland fell away in that second half for about 25 minutes against Wales. That really concerned me as far as their defensive pressure. So if France are able to put that defensive pressure on Scotland again like we saw against Wales, then Scotland are going to be in for a very, very hard time at the office this weekend. So yeah, I think it's going to be a tight one, but I do see France just edging this one, and I think they're going to bounce back from that defeat from Ireland next week. If they don't, there's going to have to be some big questions asked about Fabian Galthie and this French team, because it's just not going to be good enough that they lose the first 2 games of the 2024 Six Nations. I know their fans are not happy, and if they go down to Scotland at Murrayfield, well, there's going to be some good questions on the table. Scotland having that nail-biting win over Wales next weekend, I think there's always going to be that point of doubt now in that Scottish team if another team starts putting pressure on them like we saw from Wales last weekend. So if France do get a roll on, it's going to really test the mettle and the belief of this Scottish team, and I think that's the biggest fear that they can live with in their head. They're going to have to play like they did in that first half against Wales last week to be able to give it to France this weekend, but can they do that for 80 minutes? That's the big question mark that I have, and we're going to have to wait and see. A few standout players for me in this game. Expect Dempsey and Dage for Scotland to have big games. Finn Russell's going to have a big game, and we need to see Van der Merwe scoring more tries in this game if Scotland are going to have a chance. On the French side, expect Dante to have a bigger game. Bielri, as I've already mentioned, will have a big game, and he'll be prominent in this team. But expect the French forwards to go hard and go strong and go long against Scotland this weekend, and I think that's where the difference is going to lie. Okay, well, that's my thoughts around the game. Now it's time for you to put all your comments down on who you think is going to win this game. Do you think it's going to be close like I'm suggesting? and it's going to be either just the French win or just a Scottish win on the other side? Or do you think it's going to be a blowout? Do you think one of these teams are going to get run on the other team and ride off into the distance? It's going to be very interesting to see what you think about this particular game. Now, I'm going to be back again after all the games this weekend with my in-depth review of each of the games, so make sure you stick around for those. The best way to do it is hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this preview of the game between Scotland and France this weekend, and I'll see you all again very soon in the next video. Until then, stay safe, stay well, keep enjoying your rugby, and I look forward to seeing you again here with Inside Rugby with Mark. Until then, it's time to say adios from Mexico. Bye for now.